Welcome to Art Share, the podcast for artists by artists, with your hosts, Brigid Ashwood, Ash Evans, and Mary Layton.
Hello and welcome. Today our topic is going to be loss chasing, also known as, Ash, you want to?
It's also known as the sunk cost fallacy, and that's actually where the coin of phrase throwing good money after bad comes from. In essence, the sunk cost fallacy is making a rational decision based on the perceived future value of objects, investments, or experiences. And a lot of people do that. It's more of an emotional experience, and it's a decision like that. And my motto for this year is finances over feelings. So I've really been exploring those topics and in talking to other artists and even other people. This applies to personal relationships. It can apply to equity in a home, business, any of it. This is applicable to every facet of your life, and just knowing when to quit and knowing what a viable investment of either time, emotion, or anything is very important in the business and in your life.
Yes, absolutely. Making decisions purely based on business rather than ego. That's the other thing we've talked about. It's like, feelings, but also I think artists, we can be susceptible to opportunities that feed our ego.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And the throwing good money after bad, I was thinking that kind of ties into the bullet point I was talking about with Mary earlier, which was this illusion that logically, because you've invested time and money in this project or this endeavor, that at some point it's just going to pay off. It must. And that's like the gambler's high. That's this
slot machine syndrome. You've sunk so many quarters and it's going to pay out at any moment now, one more pull. And that's how it's addictive. And that's why it's bad for you.
Yes. Okay. So we're talking about that today. Anybody have some good examples that they can think of? Doesn't have to be, you can tell it anonymously. You can be like, I have this friend, and one time.
I've actually spoken to several people that have had experiences like this. And I mean, this can be applicable to anything. It's a piece that's not working that you've reworked 50 times, but you've invested so much time into it, you don't want to throw it away. I've spent 5 hours on this.
Mm-hmm.
If it's not working, a lot of the times it's better to just start over. And that perceived time waste or, the paper's expensive or something comes into this decision. And we've all been there where you need to take a step back because that's an emotional, visceral investment that you've made in that decision. And you're just banging your head up against the wall. It's frustrating.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm sure some of us have even been in romantic or personal relationships where
I don't know what you're talking about. That's insane.
You just keep investing more and more time, and then you're kind of in the middle of it, and it's swirling all around you, and you go,
I just love him hard enough, he'll change.
Right? I've already wasted 2 years of my life. Surely it will pay off. I mean, this payoff, and you have to also really think about if what you're gaining is worth what you're sacrificing or what you're using to pursue it. Just time is so precious.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to get it back, and there's no guarantee that your investment's going to pay off.
Mm-hmm.
In the stock market of your life, you can invest all you want, but that doesn't mean they're going to hand you Apple shares and they're going to go up.
Right.
I mean, there's no guarantee ever that anything's going to pay off. And you said something about licensing. People doggedly pursue licensing thinking, if I get my crap in Hot Topic, that's it. I'm going to be able to quit my job. I'm totally set. Obviously everyone who's in there is a millionaire.
Mm-hmm.
And that's actually a giant crock of crap.
Yeah.
I know firsthand from another person that has items in Hot Topic. They actually had to switch manufacturers for their product because Hot Topic wanted to have a 70% markup.
Nice.
Okay, so they had to sell it to them so cheap so that Hot Topic could have a 70% markup. And I think it's like on like a $20 item.
Mm-hmm.
Think about that for a minute on how, it's like pennies. And
yeah, there's always going to be that trade-off, because I know I had t-shirts in Walmart at one point, but the company that manufactured the t-shirts, because Walmart expected a higher profit margin, they made like special shirts that went just to Walmart that were much cheaper in quality. And so that was a little bittersweet, because, it was exciting, I guess, for people to see my stuff in Walmart. And yeah, I got a big check for that one, but just once, one big check. But okay. So,
yeah, it was an ego boost. But I mean, that's outlet clothing stores. They make a lower quality item, market at retail, and then you're perceiving it as getting as a lesser value. And
perceived value thing. Yes.
A lot of your life decisions are being based on this perception of value, and value of things, and success is measured differently by different people. Success to one person is $1 million. Success to another person is having a book in Barnes and Noble. I mean, it's being successful or saying you're successful. It's a very varied term that could be anything. I mean, some people think successful is making $100 at a show.
Right. You really have to define it for yourself, your personally success. And what's more, what is that quote? Who was it with like, comparison is like the kills joy when you compare yourself to other people. And you have to understand that, wherever you are on the ladder, there's people ahead of you and there's people behind you, and the people behind you, their perception of you. I mean, I've had fellow artists come up to me and say that, your career is my goal. And I'm like, what career? What is it that I have? Really? Because I'm still, I have no perception that I've somehow made it, but people, there are people who look at me and think that, and I find that hilarious, because I'm looking over here at somebody else and feeling like, okay, they've made it. And then you talk to that person and they're like, what's made it? And what's more, I think becoming comfortable with that, with just where you are on the journey and not the destination, is huge. Because really, I have to say, the few sort of career goals I've had, when I've met them, it was awesome for about 20 minutes. And then I was sort of depressed and felt like, well, what next? And I had to find something else. And so really, I think you're happiest as a creative person when you're sort of always chasing the horizon. I mean, I think, and I don't know that how fulfilling is it if I were really to sit back one day and go, okay, now I've made it. Well, what's next? Die? I mean, I don't know that really that would be quite as satisfying as we imagine that it would be anyway,
Right. Well, there's a fine balanced line between that and like Ahab syndrome. Pursuing the whale at all costs is going to get you killed. But always having a goal to strive for, as long as it's a rational, healthy goal. And those are you. Is it healthy? Is it rational? Is it good for me? That's way more important.
And is it achievable? Right. Exactly. Yeah. Because give it up if it's not, and you have to be constantly reevaluating that. And I actually think that can be challenging sometimes with some of the people around you that don't get what we do and don't have that entrepreneurial spirit. Because I can remember a friend from years ago, he's not a friend anymore because she didn't get it, but it's saying to me, well, you never finish anything. You never follow through. You have all these, abandoned projects. And for a half second, that kind of hit me, and I felt funny about that. But then I was reading some more things about the entrepreneurial spirit and Bill Gates and Steve Jobs, and how many people who have accomplished great things, how many projects they've had that they've abandoned, or how many failures that they had, or things like that. And I thought, okay, so that's how she feels, but is that really true? And definitely it's not, because I have as more successes or more things, and what I count as a success is, I mean, a project that I finished and did what I intended with. Okay. Maybe it wasn't financially successful. I mean, that is a different, marker to evaluate it by, but I did complete the project. And then I have other things that are just sort of on the shelf waiting. One of those things was independently publishing Oracle decks with my own Oracle system. I invented that Oracle system a decade ago, okay, and specifically for artists, because it's only 30 cards. And I know so many artists that want to do a tarot deck, but oh my God, that's 78 cards. It's a freaking nightmare, okay? So 30 cards based on tarot, great, here's the system, and just get started. So 10 years ago, I did it. It took me time to work with it, to mature, to go back and tweak it and make it better. Then it took time for the independent publishing to get cheaper, for printing costs to come down, for more things to become available, for me to become wiser about how to market this to the public, and then to have the time and the capital to go ahead and become a small publisher, buy my ISBNs, get all that stuff done. And so because that sat on the shelf for 10 years didn't mean that it was a failure or that I wasn't continuing with it. It just meant I had to look at it, like you were saying, Ash, finances over feelings, rationally, and say, it's not time yet, but that doesn't mean it won't ever be. And so just keep going back and revisiting it and waiting to do it when it was time. And I'm glad I did. I'm glad I didn't sell out to a larger publisher, because there was some interest, but they would have messed it up, Right.
Well, and that was a perceived value at the time, was that major publisher, and you had to decide if that perceived value was actually something that was going to be a good investment.
Right, because when I looked at the numbers, it wasn't. It might have been an influx of cash, like initially, but then after that, there was no benefit to it. But we've been doing all the talking again, so we have to remember every once in a while to go, hey, Mary. What do you think, Mary?
I think, what you said is true. Sometimes you have to evaluate something and say, this isn't right for right now, and put it aside. And I think that's a good way to avoid doing the loss chasing, is if you get to a point where you've invested so much time and so much, sometimes even money, with something that it hasn't worked out, and you start thinking, if I just keep doing it, it's going to work. If I just keep doing it, it's going to work, and it's not, then maybe you need to just sit back and say, I need to put this aside for a while and try something different.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the definition of insanity right there is repeating the same action over and over again, expecting a different result when nothing's changed. Sometimes,
and
it's not quitting. It's deciding that this isn't working in its current incarnation, and you put it aside because you're getting emotional, right? You have to detach yourself from that, and that's what revisiting something at a later date does, is it removes that emotional pull, and then you look at it with a clear mind frame, and then you make that decision. When I weigh decisions now, when things come to me, I go, is this actually good for me? Is it flattering? Is it flattering to me? And is that why I find it appealing? Is this my ego making this decision? Because that's not going to serve me later on. Is it financially viable? Is it something that I really feel like would pay off in the long run if it isn't an immediate payoff? And I just keep going off this mental checklist. I'm sure you ladies have other things. What do you ask yourself when making decisions like that?
Time is more important to me than money. Sorry, Mary, what did you say?
Yeah, well, pretty much the same thing that Ash said. What is going to be the result of this if I go ahead and do this? Is it really going to benefit me, or is it just sort of an ego thing?
Right. And that said, I mean, I feel like I don't want to trash projects that we do just for ego. Like, that's okay. You know what I mean?
Oh,
Like,
sure.
as long as you're aware of it, as long as you're not deluding yourself and you're aware of that this one just feels good. This one I just want, it's a feather in my cap, and that's fine. You know?
It's not a business model, is what we're saying.
No, right.
Not
exactly.
your business model. Doing it on occasion. I mean, we all have passion projects or things that we want to do. But I see a lot of people, especially new aspiring artists, they want it all, and they want it all right now. And that's how they build their business. It's just, they're like frogs in a bog, just snapping at flies constantly, trying to drag down whatever they can get their hands on. And that is not a way to build a sustainable business.
Right.
Even internet virality, it's a flash in the pan.
Mm-hmm.
You have to really think about, riding that wave, because it's going to come to a stop eventually too. And just, that's when the rational decision making comes in.
It's funny that you say that too, because I was thinking how Mary and I, in addition to being artists, are also published authors. And in some of the forums and chat rooms and websites and stuff that I follow, especially with indie authors right now, there's with certain groups, I don't want to paint everybody with a broad brush, but there's a lot of people who are like, teach me how to write a bestseller. Teach me what's marketable right now. What can I write that's marketable? And they're focused on that more than they are on writing a good book. Okay. And so that's the fine line. We're not saying that, creating to market is bad. I create to market all the time, but there's that overlap. There's the, what's that called? The Venn diagram. What you want is that sweet spot in the middle. You want the stuff that you do because it's marketable, and the stuff that you do just because you like it. And if you can merge those two together, that is the sweet spot. So like with my art for this year, that's what I'm trying to do. And work smarter, not harder. And I have a whole lineup of paintings I want to create, and each painting serves many purposes. I'm not creating anything I don't want to create, that doesn't speak to my heart, that I'm not enjoying painting, but it's also hitting, the colorways that I needed to hit for my manufacturers right now for what they're telling me is, popular color profiles. It's hitting, it's, if I'm going to put animals in the composition, it's probably going to be the most popular animals: cats, owls, ravens, wolves, right? Foxes. What else? It's going to, dragons, feature those, unicorns. Unicorns even. So that basically every time I'm working, because time is more important to me than money, but time equals money. Okay. But I can make more money. I can't make more time. So every painting has to hit all these spots for me. So right. It can be a sticker and a figurine and a print and a cross stitch pattern and a t-shirt and a mug.
Yeah, now with my work, if it can't do 3 functions, I just don't make it. Mm-hmm. Like Amy Brown got all over me to make those tea cats, the little kitties in the teacups. And I was like, I don't know. She's like, you should do it. It'll be great. And it is. Because
it's genius.
They could be made into figurines. They could be made into they'd be adorable die cut stickers.
Yes.
They could be, so that's statuary prints, and think it's just,
yeah.
It's easy money. It's going to fall in my lap, and I'm going to say, hooray. I mean, it could be a calendar. It could be all kinds of things.
A calendar, and it hits so many sweet spots for marketing-wise, because all the kitty cat people, all the tea people, all the fantasy people, all the kawaii people that like cute stuff. There's like so many genres that it covers right there.
I'm hitting every cat cafe in the country, trying to hold all my prints to them, because they're all done.
Awesome.
But yeah, I mean, just stuff like that. But I mean, I've had other series or other things that just didn't work. I mean, I used to paint dragons a lot when I first started out, and they were really popular for a while, and then they weren't. And then people are like, oh, you don't paint dragons anymore. You didn't buy them.
Right.
That's the bottom line. I mean, it's great and all that you enjoyed them, but no one purchased them. Mm-hmm. And the electric company kind of likes to get paid in exchange for my use of electricity. And
that's where Patreon, I think, is kind of a good idea. Like I have a Patreon account but I haven't set it up or used it or anything like that. But I can see Patreon maybe being good at testing the waters with that, because it's very frustrating as artists. We're always getting people saying, this is what you should do. Okay, you should paint more of these or something like that. And the problem is that frequently, whatever the suggestion is, it's something that, yes, we've heard before, and maybe we get asked even, say, once a month, maybe even once a week, we might get this particular suggestion, but it doesn't translate into enough sales that make it worth our time. But what you could do is perhaps with Patreon is test that out and go, oh, okay, really? You really want to see me do that? And guess what? Go over to my Patreon account, and if you sign up for like the lowest level or whatever, that might be a way of testing it. Okay. See how many people, because we have so many stories from so many artist friends who were like, oh, everybody, wanted me to do steampunk mermaids. And I did a whole series and I haven't sold any of them. They don't sell. So
that's what, well, Mary and I both have Patreon pages.
Yeah.
I'll have to like post the links for that after.
Yeah, we can do that.
But that's what the great thing about crowdfunding is too, segueing into something nefarious for me. Everybody wanted me to do that plush unicorn.
Because it's awesome. Okay, explain what a unicorn is, though. Explain.
Because I painted the unicorn last year because I'm like, this is going to sell. Because I was like, oh, it does things. It could be a sticker and that, so that all ties in there. But everyone's like, oh my God, do a plush. And then ever since January of last year, I've gotten inquiries. Do this plush, do this plush, do this plush. Well, guess what, people? Plush are expensive. It's like buying a car. It's like buying a car, okay? I'm not throwing out that kind of money. So now I'm going to do a Kickstarter. And it's like, well, pony up, people. This is what you said you wanted. So this is the time to put your money where your mouth is, or I'm going to learn a lesson to not listen to you anymore.
Right.
So it's all or nothing. If you really want to do it, and that's one thing I think, if you're not an artist watching this, if you really enjoy an artist's work and you wish they would do more stuff, obviously telling them is fantastic, but showing them with money is probably the nicest thing that you could do. If you like, steampunk or something, buy their steampunk prints. We look through our sales. I'm sure you and Mary both look through your sales at the end of the year and go, oh, well, this sold a lot of this, and then you either discontinue something or you decide to paint more the next year or something like that. I mean, we're not just completely muse driven. I mean, that's a fantastic thought, to think that we're inspired and there's harp music and cherubs just drop little ideas in our heads and we just paint blissfully all day long. No, we pay bills. You're a mom. Mary, you right. Everybody has responsibilities and things, and we do a lot of crap that we don't want to do to get paid, because we all
it's a job. It's a job. Yeah. Not to make it sound like, because at the same time we do get to do what we love, so it's not nobody's sitting here whining about that at all. Okay, right. But it is also a job, and you have to treat it as a job. And I think I've had some friends over the years where that's definitely the challenge, where, if they didn't feel inspired, or I can remember having tough conversations with some friends that were struggling with that, and they just didn't feel like they wanted to paint. They didn't feel inspired, or, even though this is their great love and their passion, they just, kind of didn't want to. And I was like, well, those are the days then when it's a job, but you don't get to quit. If you've chosen this as your profession, then those are the days where you get in there and you're still painting, and maybe you're not having fun, and that sucks, and I'm sorry, but you still got to do it. You know what I mean? And don't buy into this illusion that because you're not jazzed to be painting, that you're not going to be painting as well. Trust your skill. Trust the investment you've put into your craft, that you'll still paint just fine. And I know, flip-flopping back and forth between writing and art, but Neil Gaiman has said that, that you have to, I'm sure Mary, you know what I'm saying, that you have to show up and you just have to write. And even when he's not inspired, he writes anyway. And then he goes back, weeks later, and he can't tell which writing was the days where it was easy or the days where it was hard. Yeah. I promise you with your art as well, maybe you might be able to tell, but your audience can't tell. Your fan base can't tell.
Well, that's why I think at least taking a art course at some kind of college level is beneficial
Mhm.
because you have to paint or do whatever during the class for like the 3 hours. You don't just sit there and wait to be inspired.
Right.
That's not how it works. It gets you into a habit. It's like going to the gym. Nobody freaking wants to go to the gym. I don't want to go to the gym, but you go anyway. And then, after not phoning it in for like a month, you get used to it. It's just, it becomes a habit.
Mhm.
And what I don't like is the perception that we need to suffer for the privilege of doing what we enjoy as an occupation. And therefore, because we enjoy it, we don't deserve to be compensated for that fairly. Because I see that prejudice a lot too. Oh, well, you get to do whatever you want for a living, so you should be fine with people not paying you, or this payment being late and stuff. And it's kind of like you almost get like a check your privilege moment, because we are at home, we are entrepreneurs, we do get to do what we want, but we still deserve respect and payment.
Right. Yeah, I know.
Still a job.
Exactly. I think because we get the benefit of doing what we love and working from home, yes, you can buy too much into that. Well, I should just be grateful. No, it's still a job. You're right. It's not brain surgery. Nobody needs what I do. But if they're looking at my work and they're considering buying it, then you need to start from the place of respect of that. Absolutely. But it's funny, that also made me, just because now we're just sort of having like a free form conversation, and that's cool. But that made me think of something too about, I'm so tired of the sort of sick romantic notion of the artist as being a hot mess, bad at business, depressed, even mentally ill. And I think that there's this alcoholics, drug addicted, there's this, society has this romantic notion of the artist as just being a flake and, and just like a mess in their personal life and emotionally, and that's what, creates their genius. Okay. While they have done studies on, on the correlation in there, you don't have to be a hot mess to be a successful artist. And I really don't want you to be depressed or addicted to the substance. I'm not addicted to anything. I'm relatively well adjusted. Everybody has their challenges, but I've worked hard on it. And you know what? Your career will go better if you're not dealing with all those other distractions. Okay. Right. And this idea that it makes you a better artist. Remember, I had a friend in high school who frankly had a drug problem. And I remember he like articulated to me that he thought he was a better artist when he was high. And I was like, well, I'm looking at your portfolio and I'm gonna have to go ahead and disagree. What is this mess of nonsense over here? I'm like, are you also reviewing it high? Because maybe that's where it's coming, it's skewed. I mean, do what you want. There's a time and place for that. If you're, into it, that's all good. But that's no way to build stability in anything.
Yeah, it's a business too. There's two sides to it. There's the creation side, and then there's the business side. And maybe your creation side might need some kind of herbal enhancement. I'm going to evaluate why that is, why in your mind you feel you need that, because that seems to me like a psychological insecurity that you need
I agree with you. Is that an emotional crutch?
Right. Maybe you need something to remove inhibitions, but that's the creative side. The business side, you can't be, getting Twinkies on your spreadsheet and crap because, you're high or whatever.
Exactly. And that kind of goes back a bit to, so now I'm going to sound like I'm contradicting myself, but not really. That goes back to another writer's quote. Hemingway said, write drunk, edit sober. Okay. So absolutely. So whatever your creative process in creating your work, go ahead. Yeah. I mean, so I've definitely, will pour a glass of wine before I'll start writing. It's definitely a very good like lubricant for words. But I have to evaluate that work with the business mind. So you have to do the editing when you're sober, because like I said, my friend who would paint these masterpieces is that he thought under the influence, and they were crap. So, but he was a really good artist. He was a really good artist otherwise. It's just like, yeah, no.
Well, that'll go back into loss chasing, though. It's the balance. I mean, you can have this passion and to pursue your work with abandon, but you also need to temper that with the sense of making rational decisions at some point.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, we're not like some cold corporation. Neither of the three of us are like that, but we still make decisions, big shaping decisions based on rationale.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just something, like I said, be passionate. That's fantastic. Pursue something, have a goal, think big, but make your decisions in a sense that, one, makes sense,
Mm-hmm.
two, are beneficial and healthy for you. Overextending yourself is something also that can feed into this sunk cost fallacy.
Mm-hmm.
You keep saying yes to things because you think the more things that I have out here, the more I'm going to accumulate, and more is more, and my career will get bigger. And I'm sure all of us have overextended ourselves kind of under that perception too. And
Absolutely.
That's detrimental to your creative process and to your mental health and to your physical health. You could be exhausted, burning the candle at both ends forever. Eventually you're going to run out of wax.
Right. Absolutely. You have to evaluate it. Cause like, I've done a calendar Kickstarter 2 years in a row, and both years they were a success, and I did make money, but that doesn't mean I'll do it again this year. I don't know if I will or not, because the time that it took to do it, and a lot of other factors, I'm not convinced. I cannot say, 100% that it was worth it. I'm going to have to reevaluate a lot of things and see, because I know for sure that other stuff that I have on my schedule definitely are. And even though if I do another calendar this year, I'm sure it will make money and it will, the Kickstarter will succeed. Is it enough? And is it worth the investment of my time when it's always a trade-off? Your time is always a trade-off. If you're doing this, you're not doing something else. And the stuff that I would not be doing this year, I'm going to have to evaluate that very carefully, because I'm not convinced that it'll be worth it. So
it's like you said yourself, you can make more money, you can't make more time.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So, because, a calendar, doing a Kickstarter, that's a month of focus, somewhere else. Getting the calendar together is at a minimum of 2 weeks if I already have most of the art produced. If I don't have the art produced for it, then that's months of creating the art specifically for it. And all of that represents, that's a couple of books and a couple other pieces of art that I can license for other things. So
Kickstarter is so much more work than I think people realize. I've spent 2 solid days just putting together graphics to put in the story section of one portion of a Kickstarter.
mm-hmm.
When this is airing, mine will probably be launched, but right now we're filming these ahead of time a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm still in the writing copy and putting the graphics together and crunching the numbers. It's so much time
mm-hmm.
before you even hit the launch button. And then it's the whole time that it's going.
Right.
And then the aftermath of packing all the stuff, it's like a 6-month commitment when you really think about it.
It really is. It really is. And then it hits your taxes at the end of the year.
Yeah.
So yeah, about that. So, but that's our half hour for this episode. So we're going to go ahead and say goodbye. And don't forget to send us your questions at art-share.org, or find us on Facebook and check the links for more information. Thanks for joining us.